across lovers. It's got an eye-candy cast, an aesthetic that
a fresh interpretation
for the well-versed and a stepping stone for those who aren't. Romeo plus Juliet isn't just Cliff Notes recollections of the original play. This is a translation in the truest sense of the word, a loving cover version rather than a bungled karaoke of what lies at the core. The humour, heartache, kinship, and caterwauling loss aren't watered down to accommodate MTV sensibilities, they're merely cropped and contextualised in a manner that relates to its current demographic.
Welcome back, my dear followers, friends, viewers, or welcome if it's the first time that you are watching my YouTube channel, My Paranormal and Mystery TV. In few minutes I'm going to make you watch incredible videos about Romeo plus Juliet, released in 1996, and then we go to Verona, because I investigated deeply about the real Romeo and Juliet. So, let me say that Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare is one of my favorite stories ever. I want to show you my Italian version, William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Here on the cover you can see this scene was from the famous movie by Franco Zeffirelli, released in 1968, with the gorgeous Olivia Hussey, who unfortunately died last year at 73. And then Romeo, played by Leonard Whiting. But today I'm not going to talk about this Romeo and Juliet, but I want to talk you about William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, released in 1996. A movie considered by critics a masterpiece, but other critics think that there are too many controversies. So let's dive into this. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. The first release of the tragedy was in 1597. I'm talking about the official release of the tragedy. Romeo plus Juliet, 1996. By the great Australian director Baz Luhrmann, based on William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and with many differences from the original tragedy. First of all, the fact that this film is a modernized adaptation of William Shakespeare's tragedy. The cast, Leonardo DiCaprio, who played the role of Romeo Montagues, Claire Danes, playing the role of Juliet Capulets, John Leguizamo, playing the role of Tybalt Capulets, the fierce cousin of Juliet. Then we have the great Harold Perrineau. Harold Perrineau is one of my favorite actors. He played in many movies, but also in several TV series, like, for example, the mythical TV series Lost, in which he played the part of Michael Dawson. And here in the movie he plays the role of Mercutio. Then we have Pete Postlethwaite, a very great loss in the history of cinema. In this movie he played the role of Friar Lawrence. For all the people who don't know this very sad news, Pete Postlethwaite died in 2011 when he was only 64. Then we have Paul Rudd playing the part of Dave Paris and many others. This movie, there have been several films adaptation on the tragedy of William Shakespeare, but this version, released in 1996 by Baz Luhrmann, is very different from all the other adaptations because is a modernized adaptation of William Shakespeare tragedy. And this movie received an Oscar nomination as Best Scenography. Now, you must know this curiosity about the cast. Leonardo DiCaprio was absolutely the first choice to play Romeo Montagues. And as you know, Leonardo DiCaprio is absolutely one of my favorite actors ever. And I think that Leonardo DiCaprio really was the perfect Romeo. His way of his talent at a so young age to play the role, with all his art, even when he kills Tybalt because he murdered his best friend, was like a brother to him. Mercutio, he absolutely deserved an Oscar. Instead, the first choice to play the role of Juliet wasn't Claire Danes, but Natalie Portman. But then they decided to script Claire Danes because between Leonardo DiCaprio and Natalie Portman there was according to the director, producers, there was a big gap of age between Leonardo DiCaprio and Natalie Portman. So they chose Claire Danes, was very, very good. Then I want to tell you that the entire title of this movie is William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet. But do you want to know the original title by William Shakespeare? It wasn't Romeo and Juliet, but the most excellent and lamentable tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. Now I tell you the main differences between the original tragedy and this film released in 1996. The rival families of Montagues and Capulets in the film are not noble families, but two rival business empires. Then the swords in the original Romeo and Juliet had been replaced with guns. And the story, the location of the story takes place not in Verona, Italy, like the original one, but in Verona Beach. You must know that Verona Beach doesn't exist. It's a fictional location, but we remind that there is a quarter of Los Angeles called Venice, like Venice in Italy. And there is a wonderful beach called the mythical Venice Beach. Instead, Verona Beach doesn't exist. It's a fictional location. The movie has been shot, the most part of the movie in Mexico. Then other scenes in California, like San Francisco and Miami in Florida. Then I will make you watch the location of all these stories. Then of course, also the time this story takes place in Verona Beach in the 90s. Instead, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare was in the 16th century. Prince Escalus in the original one was Prince of Verona. Instead, in the film is Captain Prince, chief of the police department of Verona Beach. And then we have these incredible differences. For example, Dave Paris is not a noble, but the governor's son. Then the chase of Tybalt by Romeo, instead to happen by feet, yes, in the original Romeo and Juliet, has been made by car, and then the two cars collide, and Romeo kills Tybalt with several gunshots. Then the Queen Mab of Mercutio in this film is a drag. Friar Lawrence in this film sends the letter to Romeo, who is in exile in Mantua, through postal courier. This is definitely modern times, even if we are in the 90s and not in the new millennium. Then, in the tragedy, the first quarrel is started by the Montagues. Instead, in the film, is started by the Capulets. Abraham is in the original one is one of the Montagues. Instead, in the movie, is one of the Capulets. In the film, it isn't said the real age of Juliet. Instead, in the original tragedy, Juliet is almost 14. In the movie, the potion that makes fall asleep and look like dead lasts for 20 hours. Instead, in the tragedy, lasts 42 hours. Then Romeo buys the poison in Verona in the film. Instead, in the original one, he buys the poison in Mantua. In the end, in the tragedy, Romeo kills Paris because he wants to impede Romeo to enter in the burial where Juliet lies. Instead, in the film, this scene has been left out. Moreover, in the final, in the end of the film, the film is more cruel than the original script because Juliet awakes while Romeo is drinking poison. So, just for a few seconds, she's not able to save him. And also Romeo understands this horrifying choice, but it's too late, and he dies in the arms of Juliet. Instead, in the original tragedy, Juliet wakes up when Romeo had already drunk the poison and died. In the original Romeo and Juliet, when she wakes up and sees that Romeo has died from drinking poison, she kills herself, stabbing at her chest. Instead, in the film, she takes her own life, shooting at her head with the gun of Romeo, and she doesn't pronounce the famous sentence. I also must tell you that I know because I read this tragedy hundreds times. I can tell you that in the film many dialogues have been left out. In the original script, Romeo, in the end of the movie, in the burial, where there is Juliet, he speaks to the corpse of Tybalt in the burial. Instead, in the film, Tybalt is not even in the burial. And then, a very great difference, there's not the famous balcony scene, but the pool scene. This film by Baz Luhrmann, who is a very great Australian director, screenwriter, and much more. He did masterpieces like, for example, Moulin Rouge, The Great Gatsby, always with Leonardo DiCaprio, Elvis, and many other movies. The movie William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet is considered by many critics absolutely a masterpiece, but there are other critics that arose controversies like extreme violence, difficult language, excessive use of sacred Christian images, and blasphemy. Is it true or not? We will discover it together at the incredible videos I'm going to show you. But did you ever wonder this question? Did Romeo and Juliet really exist? Because if you make many researches, they tell you that Romeo and Juliet are fictional characters, and their families, the Montagues and Capulets, were inspired by feuding Italian families. Shakespeare was inspired, above all, by the poem of Arthur Brooke, The Tragical History of Romeo's and Juliet. And the story takes place in Italy, in Verona and Mantua, in the early Renaissance, because there were feuds between powerful families at that time here in Italy. So why does the tragic love story of Romeo and Juliet keep on fascinating millions of people even nowadays? And, excuse me, why is there a statue of Juliet in Verona? Because for people who know me, I'm not a superficial paranormal investigator or a superficial investigator of the mystery, and by now I live in Italy, so I can tell you that Romeo and Juliet really existed, and I'm going to show you all the concrete proofs, all the places in Verona, and where this tragedy really happened. And I can tell you that the names were very similar, and Juliet died when she was 18 years old, and the time is before Renaissance. I don't speak anymore. Let's watch these incredible videos. Warning! Some images could disturb the sensitivity of the viewers. I've decided to start with curiosities, and then we delve into the darkness.
Scene of somewhere between Venice Beach, Mexico City, Miami, Verona, Italy, but it's called Verona Beach. The modern adaptation takes us through a classic tragic love story of two star-crossed lovers, Romeo, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Juliet, played by Claire Danes. The two find themselves...
Here you see the mythical actor Harold Perrineau playing the role of Mercutio, Romeo's best friend. Here in the movie, dressed as drag queen. Watch! Incredible!
Now, Mercutio is first seen in a women's wear outfit. He is dressed in drag. I think Mercutio's character and Baz really push the narration with this scene because he's wearing women's clothes, and I think it pushed like the youth to wear women's clothes, or maybe pushed boys to dress more flamboyant and colorful. Even the scenes after where he's wearing these sheer shirts and very flowy tops, I personally think that it definitely had an influence on men wearing, or young men wearing, women's clothes or something that's a little bit more feminine. So Mercutio, who's played by Harold Perrineau, he's seen wearing two types of white shirts in the movie, a sheer white shirt and a white pin tuck shirt, both really nice, and then on bottom he's wearing these slim black pants. I can't really tell if they're a dress pant or just a chino. They look very flowy, so I'm assuming it's more so of a dress pant. And he does have some chains with a cross and then some rings, and he's definitely, again, like I said, more flamboyant looking, but still looks amazing. And you can tell he's not part of either family just because of the way he dresses. It's kind of neutral. So as for which family...
And what about Tybalt? Let's discover it together.
Is unquestionably the main attraction on the Capulet side. And what can I say about John Leguizamo here? It is a startling performance.
Peace. I hate the word, as I hate hell. All Montagues.
But the biggest impression on the Montague side is made by Romeo's gang, especially Dash and the Hawk as the luggish, sensitive Benvolio. Benvolio is a bubbling puddle of love with a gun in one hand. He's a bit of a lad, but his name, which means the well-wisher, betrays his role as the only one besides Tybalt who knows that things are about to go south.
The day is hot, the capitals are abroad, and if we meet we shall not escape a brawl.
And this incredible actor has been a very great loss in the cinema. Here he played the role of Friar Lawrence.
Postlethwaite, R.I.P. Never has a man been more tender, compassionate, and badass than Postlethwaite as Father Lawrence in this film.
Be plain, good son, and homely in thy drift. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift.
When Spielberg, arguably the most successful movie director in history, calls you the best actor in the world...
The famous balcony scene had been replaced with a pool scene, so a very courageous choice by the director. Watch and listen.
Danes and DiCaprio understand Juliet and Romeo at their core. Romeo is a horny teen, but he's sharp as a tack. Juliet is as innocent as doves and as wise as serpents. Romeo bursts out with a petty outcry for physical satisfaction.
Oh, wilt thou leave me so unsatisfied?
She calls him out with a faux naive response.
What satisfaction canst thou have tonight?
She knows exactly what he means, but she's going to make him say it and then throw him out on his ear. Romeo recognizes that he screwed up and he recalibrates. He says what he knows will break through her defenses.
The exchange of thy love's faithful vow for mine.
And it works. She crumbles.
I gave thee mine before thou didst request it.
Two smart teenagers playing romantic chess. Sure, they make mistakes. Sure, they don't consider the repercussions on their families or their community. They're focused on only two things, Romeo and Juliet.
And now, I start delving into the darkness. As you see, the title of the movie, William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet. There is a cross. Then you see Romeo. Later, I will make you listen to the director Buzz, so he will explain you how difficult it was to shoot this scene the first time that Romeo meets and sees Juliet. Watch this. This was a fish tank, and it was very difficult to shoot this scene that apparently, and it's so magnetic. Many probably don't remember well the movie because they asked me, but when happens the first kiss between Romeo and Juliet? So watch this. They are at the masquerade ball. They hide in the elevator. Juliet still didn't know that Romeo is not one of the Capulets. And then when she discovers this, listen.
My only love sprung from my only hate. Too early seen unknown and known to wait. Prodigious birth of love it is to me that I must love a loathed enemy.
This is the ending of the movie. I make you see a part. Just look at it. That then later I will delve into this controversial scene. Watch. Look how many crosses. Too many. It looks like to be in a dark video clip of some metal artist. And the way Juliet lies reminds me Sleeping Beauty, but also Snow White. But in this case, there is a tragic ending. This is also the ring of their marriage and love forever. Look at these particulars. Then I will make you see how it really ends. And now, let's delve into all the controversies of the film. I start.
The film is based in a more contemporary world than William Shakespeare days. Baz uses the feud of the two families being based around their competing businesses, as we can see the two side by side in the centre of the city. As with business or public figure feuds we see today, they are majorly influenced by the media. The newspaper headlines and the use of television giving us the prologue is the media fueling us the information in the conflict between the Capulet and Montagues.
Romeo is the son of Mr. Montague. Look also at this entrance. Look at these particulars. There are crosses everywhere. Look, crosses. Crosses. I go on because you will understand what I mean.
We see him in a suit, shirt buttoned up, with a blazer and pants. Not in your typical Montague attire. Even Romeo's stature is unlike those in his family. His stature is more hunched over, he's rather lean, long shaggy hair, and kind of blends in with the scenery. Straight away, Baz makes it clear Romeo does not identify with his Montague name. Baz Luhrmann uses costume to identify Romeo's path as well. Once he kills Tybalt, the priest gives Romeo a colourful Hawaiian shirt. He wears this unbuttoned when he sees Juliet and escapes Verona. We see this outfit again being representative of the Montague name when Romeo rushes to see Juliet one last time. As they both lay together in death, we are given a pan-out of the white, pure Capulet girl with her Montague man beside her. So let's go back to when Romeo and Juliet first met. One could argue the two are dressed in the purest form of man and woman. Romeo as a knight in shining armour, and Juliet as a white heavenly angel. Even cloak her makeup, or lack thereof, just to portray her youth.
I want to stress that in the end, and then I reveal you a secret about the final scene in which both Romeo and Juliet take their own life. This happens in a church. So you must know that according to Catholic Christian Church, suicide is a deadly sin, and it also at all the sin happens in a church. In the middle of so many crosses, and Juliet takes his own life before the statue of the Virgin Mary. Oh my gosh! Is this blasphemy? We will discover it later. Another symbolism. Juliet wears angel wings.
Purity. Also at the party is Tybalt, who dresses as a devil, which really speaks for itself.
The death of Mercutio is really heartbreaking and also very dark. Watch.
However, when realizing his self-sacrifice, he speaks the infamous words, "A plague on both your houses." After this acclaim, thunder strikes.
Made worms meat of me. A plague on both your houses!
Mercutio later dies, and Tybalt and Romeo are in a chase, now in the pouring rain. Going back to the standoff scene, with Romeo in his dirty and blood-stained shirt, the rain now drenching him, adding to his tarnished exterior. The rain also makes the scene and the town more gritty and dirty. It heavily rains as Romeo kills Tybalt and he falls into the fountain behind him. The weather continues when Tybalt...
There is also much water that should be symbol of pureness, but what we really see in the film are rivers of blood.
In the flashback after the death of Romeo and Juliet, Baz gives us the lasting image of these two star-crossed lovers not in death but underwater. The scene is where Romeo proposes to Juliet and they share a kiss underwater, where they are happy, free, and together in love. Water is consistently used throughout the movie to suggest the unclean nature of the city, having the need to wash away all of its sins.
Immediately the film starts with a statue of Jesus.
This statue that is a replica of Christ the Redeemer. We can gather this town identifies with this figure. When we first see the boys, they are draped in religious figures and symbols. They have pictures on their guns, crucifixes hanging from their cars, necklaces. Tybalt's attire has religious images entailed. Juliet has dedications in her bedroom surrounding her. There is religious connotations in nearly every scene, and even in the typography of this movie. This world is drenched in it. We see this a lot today.
So many religious symbols of Christian religion, even the Virgin Mary in the gun. Oh my gosh! So it's I'm really skeptical because they don't act in a religious way as they display with their t-shirts or sacred Christian images.
Religion, however, make sexual suggestions to a band of young nuns, and more prominent, have no fear or problem creating war within their city. They drape themselves in this attire, yet have no religious guilt that they have sinned. Light blue paves the way to Juliet's burial, this blue being the connotation of Virgin Mary, the purest female figure in this religious culture. We also have another representative of religion, with Tybalt dressing as the devil at the party and his sidekicks in the Day of the Dead makeup and attire. Again, this religion...
The plot of the movie closely follows Shakespeare
play, with the rivalry between the Montagues and Capulets being transplanted to a modern-day urban setting. Romeo, a Montague, meets and falls in love with Juliet, a Capulet, at a party. Despite their family's violent feud, they decide to marry in secret. The conflict between the two families escalates, leading to tragic consequences. What makes Luhrmann's adaptation unique is how it marries Shakespeare's 16th century language with late 20th century visuals, creating a striking contrast that defines the film's style. Catholicism, with crosses and icons scattered throughout the scenes, with the grittiness of gang violence, creating a world where the sacred and the profane collide. The heightened visual style of the film complements the passionate, impulsive nature of its central characters, underscoring the emotional intensity of Romeo and Juliet's love story. Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes deliver standout performances as the star-crossed lovers. DiCaprio, who was already gaining recognition as a talented young actor at the time, brings a brooding yet vulnerable intensity to Romeo. His portrayal is marked by youthful idealism and emotional depth, making his Romeo both reckless and sincere. DiCaprio's ability to convey raw emotion, whether in scenes of romantic yearning or in moments of grief, makes him a compelling lead. Claire Danes' portrayal of Juliet contrasts beautifully with DiCaprio's Romeo. Danes brings a more grounded, thoughtful quality to her performance, making Juliet less impulsive and more introspective than some traditional portrayals. Harold Perrineau, as Mercutio, steals many scenes with his exuberant and flamboyant performance. His portrayal of Romeo's close friend is lively and wild. John Leguizamo also shines. His anger and disdain toward the Montagues is palpable, and his confrontations with Romeo and Mercutio are charged with tension. One of the most daring aspects of Luhrmann's adaptation is its use of Shakespeare's original language in a modern-day setting. While many adaptations of Romeo and Juliet choose to update the dialogue along with the setting, Luhrmann makes the bold choice to retain the Elizabethan English. This creates a striking juxtaposition between the old and the new. The language is delivered with rapid-fire energy, often at odds with the flashy visuals, which gives the film a unique rhythm. While some critics argue that this contrast can be jarring, especially for those unfamiliar with Shakespearean language, love, family loyalty, violence, and fate remain intact, Luhrmann's version adds a modern interpretation to these elements. The decision to set the story in a contemporary urban landscape heightens the relevance of the family feud, recontextualizing it within a world of gang violence and corporate rivalry.
The guns, styled with the names of swords engraved on them, highlight how senseless and brutal the violence between the families has become, reflecting the destructive consequences of modern-day warfare and territorial disputes. The film also emphasizes the impulsivity and recklessness of young love. Romeo and Juliet's romance unfolds in a whirlwind of passion and danger, with the modern setting underscoring how quickly their decisions escalate into tragedy. The visual style, with its quick cuts and heightened color palette, mirrors the intensity and speed. This imagery plays a prominent role throughout the film. Crosses, church settings, and religious iconography are omnipresent, drawing attention to the tension between love and fate. This imagery underscores the fatalistic aspect of the story, reminding viewers that Romeo and Juliet's love is doomed from the start. The frequent use of Catholic symbols also adds a layer of irony, as the characters' violent actions seem at odds with the moral and ethical values suggested by the religious motifs. While Romeo
Additionally,
Shakespearean language with a modern setting has divided audiences. While some appreciate the fusion, others find it jarring, feeling that the dialogue doesn't always mesh well with the contemporary visuals and action. This can make the film difficult to follow, particularly for viewers who are less familiar with Shakespeare's language or who expect a more traditional adaptation. Despite its polarizing elements, Romeo and Juliet 1996 has had a lasting cultural impact. It introduced a new generation to Shakespeare, blending pop culture with classical literature in a way that made the story accessible and exciting for younger audiences. The film's soundtrack, featuring contemporary artists like Radiohead and Garbage, further enhanced its appeal to the MTV generation.
many people didn't notice that in Romeo and Juliet has been also used the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Watch. But is it so true that this movie contains blasphemies, controversies? Here we have the genius director Baz Luhrmann in an interview done about 4 years ago, and he himself explains you all the questions you have been wondering for so many years. Watch and listen to Baz Luhrmann.
I'll never quite have a Romeo and Juliet again, because just the crossroads of that cast, Shakespeare in Mexico, that music, everybody was unknown. An unknown Leonardo, an unknown Claire, a very just beginning to be, Don Leguizamo. The list goes high and low audiences. Shakespeare, he invented 1/4 of the English language. Like, he just made words up. I want to address the question, if Shakespeare were here today, how might he make a movie? So every decision in the film, whether it's like pop music, Shakespeare took popular music from the street, put it in the movie. Stand-up comedy, at the beginning, from me, every decision came from an analysis of what would Shakespeare, the ultimate street writer, the ultimate in the way that the door to Shakespeare has been opened for me when I was younger. We were originally going to shoot it, I think in Vancouver, but, for a hot kind of visceral, sexy place, Vancouver is great, but probably not the best location. And so we end up in Mexico with, I think 19, 20-year-old Leonardo and young Claire Danes. It was just incredible. I mean, Claire, was so mature beyond her years, like Juliet, actually. And, John Leguizamo, all these young actors. In the play, Romeo and Juliet just sort of meet through a curtain because it was a theatre convention. How could that be a surprising way of meeting? And Craig Pierce and I are riding in Miami. We went out, and I went to the bathroom. It was a place called The Dome. And I came out, and there was a fish tank. And I'm washing my hands, and I look, there's a girl. She's like combing her hair on the other side of the tank. And exactly how it is in the movie.
Aye, a scratch.
When we shot Mercutio's death, we built everything on that beach. It was in Veracruz on the east coast of Mexico. Like a hurricane came in, and we built everything. We're about to shoot the death scene. And all the young actors got together, we were wearing sand goggles, you know, and we go like, we better get out of here, you know, we gotta get out of here. It was like sort of being in a sandstorm in a desert. And they said, no, we've come this far, let's just do one shot. So we do the one master shot, and it's the shot where Mercutio's dead, and Leonardo's got him in his arms, and he's crying. And he runs to the car right up in the background in his silver sports car and drives off. It's all in one shot. And we shot that shot, and then the entire set, everything, we got out of there, the hurricane just wiped out the entire beach. That was it. So the rest of the scene was actually picked up. I post-produced in Skywalker Ranch in San Francisco. We went down to San Francisco Bay, and we had big sand, and I think Sam was holding up sort of polystyrene bits of the set. People were throwing sand, and all the close-ups are done basically in San Francisco Bay. But that was after we shot for like a year or something in Mexico.
I do.
My wife. My favorite scene in the film to shoot, actually got permission to shoot the death scene in this incredible church in the middle of Mexico City. You know, we had that actual helicopter that attacks Leonardo, that was we shot it real. Everything was real. And it was the middle of maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and just this vast cathedral full of neon signs, neon crosses and flowers and candles. And really in the end, because I wanted a very quiet set, it was just myself, Leonardo, Claire. And I walked in the church on my own just to feel it. I did that walk that Leonardo did, walking right down. And they were just down, sitting, rehearsing a little, and I came down and started rehearsing with them. And it was such a serene experience. And I actually went, wow, I was walking back, it was a warm night, and I'm actually enjoying doing this. I don't think I've ever had that feeling before or since. When Juliet wakes up and finds Romeo, she's missed him, and she breaks into that emotion. It was so strong, and she didn't try to do pretty crying. She just poured true emotion out. And in that vast cathedral, and you know, I think I'm doing a long shot. There's me and like very small camera crew. It was really haunting and beautiful. It was kind of like it is in the movie. It really was like it was in the movie.
Oh, me, what friend?
So, have you heard the director Baz Luhrmann? No blasphemy, because the movie The End was shot in a real church in Mexico, and the Mexican church itself allowed to shoot that scene. So no blasphemy. And I guess it because I really love the director Baz Luhrmann. I really love all his movies. I think he's a genius. And so Unveiled the mystery. No blasphemy, just a masterpiece movie. I go on.
I'm here. My life were better ended by their hate than death broken.
People who are now adults kind of get a bit funny around the eyes when they talk about Romeo and Juliet. You know, like they might talk about Moulin Rouge, but with Romeo and Juliet they get a bit still. And I think it's because they're remembering their first, physical awakenings while watching the movie. I'm not sure, but people get intense and strange about it in a really nice way, but in a way isn't immediately easy to decode what they're going through.
Parting such sweet sorrow that I shall say goodnight till it be morrow.
I'm just happy that 25 years later, it isn't like, oh yeah, you made that, like people actually, audiences, fans, non-fans, there's still a visceral energy around the show, around the story, around the movie, and that means I don't feel so old.
And now the final part of the documentary. who were the real Romeo and Juliet? Here you are watching the amazing Verona, one of my favorite Italian cities ever. And I can tell you that it's really wonderful. I know for sure. So let's dive into the real story. This is the statue of Juliet in Verona. Her real name was Giulietta Cappello. She was born in 1284 and she died in 1302. And this was the symbol of her family, a cappello, a hat, because her family did hats. Verona was a dangerous place at that time, and the ruler, Bartolomeo de Scala, means stair. And in the novel, he was instead Prince Escalus. This was the house of Romeo Montagues, because then he was exiled in Mantua. Their family, Cappello and Montagues, were in fight because the Montagues supported the emperor. Instead, Cappello supported the Pope. In fact, Dante Alighieri came to Verona when Romeo and Juliet had died from few time. He came in Verona. He arrived just after the death of the two, and Dante wrote about Cappello and Montagues in the Divine Comedy, in Purgatory. When Juliet took her own life in 1302, her family, because at that time suicide was a deadly sin, she was thrown in this place with no crosses and no blessing. This is the real balcony of Juliet in Verona. Real name Giulietta Cappello. You can see the real balcony. And now I make you see. Here we are, Giulietta Cappello and her statue. And now let's delve deeply in the real story of Romeo and Juliet. Look, these are in Italian indication. Bartolomeo della Scala forbade their love because one family supported the emperor and the other one supported the Pope. Look at my gorgeous Verona. I wasn't born in Verona, I'm half Italian, but I really love this city. And these are the times that I'm proud to be really, look Look at the gorgeous! Absolutely! And there are always tourists, as you may see. Look at the enchanting Verona in Italy. Look at the wonders. And these are all the... Look at all the tourists and all the people in love. All right, in their love, in these bricks. Look, because it was the house of Romeo. Look. And it was discovered then Rosaline really existed. She was the cousin of Giulietta. But when Romeo went to the masquerade ball to meet Rosaline, he completely fell in love with her cousin Juliet. So Dante Alighieri changed a bit the names as other writers, as Shakespeare got inspired. The real name of Juliet, as I made you watch, was Giulietta Cappello, and the real name of Romeo was Cagnolo Nogarola, called Romeo. The former house of Romeo was just 2 blocks away from Juliet's house. Watch this. We go to the house of Juliet. Here we are, the real balcony of Juliet in Verona. Look. There is also many nature, so Romeo could climb. And this is the statue of Juliet in Verona. Watch this wonder. Look. Giulietta Cappello. I want to tell you that for questions of security, the original statue of Juliet is into the house. This is a perfect copy. This is I tell you this to inform you. Look, Juliet. The story was real, and still millions of tourists in every season come to Verona to see everything about. Look, all the lovers. Look what they live here. The real balcony. And here we are into the house of the real Juliet. Watch. We step on the stairs. Look at the real house. The house makes you understand. Look, this is one of my favorite pictures ever. Look, it's evident that her family was rich. And look, this is the sight from the balcony of Juliet. Watch, that's so incredible. Really, really incredible. Other stairs. It's incredible, amazing, gorgeous walls. Oh my God, really, really. There is also a museum. And look at the starry ceiling, gorgeous. The masquerade ball really happened, and it happened in this large room into the house of the Capulets, real surname Capello. As you may see, it was very large. The real walls of Verona, the real walls, and Romeo was exiled out of these walls and these gates to Mantua until the tragedy. And so, look, it reminds me the movie of Baz Luhrmann. And now, are you ready to watch the real tomb of Juliet? Because her family considered her nothing, because she took her own life. So, no funeral, no a proper burial and blessing. But then it was built something for her. Her tomb is in a monastery. I'm going to make you watch. Look, Tomba di Giulietta, tomb of Juliet. Look, there is also a statue of William Shakespeare. Gorgeous. Look, his position. It's really amazing. Eyes, look, and we are getting closer to the burial of Juliet. You can see, because she's buried in a crypt, we'll understand better. Look, everything is gorgeous. And then we go to the crypt down the stairs. Look, it's really incredible. Look, we are near. Look, this is it. This is the tomb of Juliet, as I made you watch before, but now I make you see it clearly. Look, this is where Juliet's bones are, her body. is here now, unfortunately in bonds, and it's really a moving moment. You can see she is not a normal tomb, even if she is buried in a monastery, and because at that time it was forbidden to celebrate a funeral for a person who took her own life. Look, it's really amazing, really. So I want to thank you so much. I'm crying right now. I really want to thank everybody for your endless love and support. I love you too from the bottom of my heart. See you soon at the next mystery. Stay tuned.